Thank you. So yeah, I'm an independent technical coach and I help teams to improve their software development practices. So I'm going to start with a question. Do you enjoy your job? Fantastic, really? Okay. And how do you know that you enjoy your job? Okay, hold that thought. This is SquareFill. You might have seen me playing it on my phone. If you haven't seen me playing it on my phone, keep an eye out. The rest of the day, I will probably be playing it on my phone during talks. I use it to satisfy my fidget urge. This is Wordlessly. This is another iOS app. In fact, they're both iOS apps. They were both made by me. The names, Wordlessly and SquareFill, are trademarked, but neither one of them is on the App Store. Okay, you'll see that a lot. That's when I don't have anything else to show you. That's a link to everything that I will be showing you today in case you want to save it for later. I was in Rotterdam a few weeks ago at Joy of Coding. And while I was there, I saw Feline Hermans tell her story about a piece of software that she's been working on called Heady. And the content of the talk was inspiring, but also the delivery, the fact that she was telling a story, a dramatic story. And stories are powerful. And I have a story to tell. And it's a true story. And it made me cry more than once. It happened to me. I'm going to tell you about how my experience of writing iOS apps consolidated a lot of useful stuff that I already know about software delivery. And I'm going to use this story as a vehicle to share all of that useful stuff about software delivery. So this, I don't know why my slides are lining up weirdly. I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. They're fine on my screen. Something odd is happening. So they're shifted across, but not on my screen. It probably means that the QR code doesn't work. And I don't know what to do about it. It's weird. But actually this QR code, don't worry about it, because the other slide that has the big QR code in the middle takes you to everything, including this. So you'll be able to work it out. Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen is a bunch of emojis. It's a puzzle. Every emoji represents a letter of the alphabet. Every line of emojis represents a word. And together, all of the words make a common phrase. Hearts are vowels, and there are 6 of them because I'm counting Y as a vowel. And if you want to have a look at that puzzle and keep thinking about it, scan this QR code, and somewhere on that page, I'm pretty sure there is a link to the emoji phrase, I hope. I'll give you the solution to this puzzle at the end of the talk. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a story. In December 2021, so a year ago, Christmas a year ago, I had been working on this iOS app, which was the one that I showed you at the start. I'd been working on it for 5 years, and I decided maybe it was time to try and actually get it onto the App Store. But I didn't know how. So I am a software engineer. I've been a software engineer for 23 years, actually. I've realized that it's already ticked up one since whenever I sent you that information. But I've never been a mobile app developer. That has never been my job. So for me, developing iOS apps is a hobby. So I don't know how to deploy apps to the App Store. And I thought that what I really wanted was a very small, simple app that I could use as a guinea pig. And Christmas last year, everybody was playing Wordle, including me. And I thought, Wordle is quite a simple little game, isn't it? Maybe I could make a little Wordle clone, because I wanted to be able to play more than one game of Wordle per day. It was frustrating to me that I could only play one a day. And it seemed like it would be fun to code, and I created a little Wordle clone, stick it on the App Store. No sharing capability, no statistics, just unlimited games. I could knock that up in a week or two, I thought. Famous last words of all developers. 1 month later, I did have a very, very bare bones version of Wordle working. But then I found out in order to get it onto the App Store, I had to do a bunch of stuff. I had to have a help page. I needed some way of offering support to my users. I had to give some way for my users to give me feedback. All of the UI components had to conform to Apple guidelines. I needed an end user license agreement, and I wanted in-app purchases because that was one of the things that I wanted to test. And in-app purchases turned out to be hard. So another month later, I was ready in February to submit it to the App Store. Okay, it's at this point that I would like to introduce Alice. Hello, Alice. Hello. Alice doesn't exist. Okay, so she's fictional, but just imagine a supportive but gently challenging person. So, Claire. Yes, Alice. Why did you start making another app? Why did you not go with the simplest version of your original app? Oh, you mean like a minimum viable product? Like is talked about in the Lean Startup book? So you've heard of MVP? Well, yes. So, minimum amount of development, and then before you spend months, okay, 5 years, before you spend years making assumptions about users, try it out on real users. Minimize risk. Except that's not what I did because it just didn't seem like it was ready yet. So I started the whole process on another app yet again. Yeah, okay. But anyway, February, I was ready to release. I was ready to press the big button. I pressed the big button. It was very exciting. I'm going to get something on the App Store. I only had to wait about, 24 hours. And then the email came, and I knew straight away because I could see in the preview, big word, rejected, for 3 reasons. The most serious reason was copycat. This app appears to be misrepresenting itself as another popular app or game already available on the App Store. Because in fact, the App Store already contained lots of Wordle clones. And to be perfectly honest, if I'd have wanted to play multiple Wordle games a day, I could have just gone and used one of these other apps. But never mind. Because there were already lots of Wordle clones on the App Store, that's why I hadn't been worried about things like copyright. I had looked into that. I thought it would be fine, but no, apparently not. Claire? Yes, Alice? So, you spent a month making the game work, then another month doing the help page, the feedback page, the in-app purchases. Why not get all of that tedious stuff working first before adding any game functionality? Oh, you mean like a walking skeleton? So that I wouldn't have any nasty surprises when I had a working app that I couldn't deploy. So yes, a walking skeleton is actually something that I subscribe to and try to use a lot, where I just deploy a Hello World app so that I know I can deploy, so that I know I can get it to prod. And then when I have a working version, I know I can get it straight to prod and I don't have to spend another month doing all the stuff that I had to do. But I didn't think that Apple would let me put a Hello World app on the App Store. I thought it would have to do something. Did you know that? Or did you assume it? Yeah, okay. I didn't know. I just assumed. I still don't actually know. But anyway. Did you get distracted having too much fun making a playable game? Yeah. But there you go. Okay, so anyway, the copycat thing. Yeah, busted. I mean, I was making a clone of an already existing app. So maybe that was the end of the story. Give up, I shouldn't be trying to build something that's already there. Apple are clearly saying you can't do this. And all I wanted was a simple vehicle that I could use to test publishing on the App Store. And maybe this just wasn't that. But I'd done all that work already, and I had an idea. Oh, hang on, not that. Stay on that. Okay, so For those that don't know, this is Wordle. When you play Wordle, you get to share a result and it's encoded like this, of these Unicode symbols. In this example, the person playing the game, the target word that they were trying to guess was circa. And these represent 5 guesses. In the first guess, in fact, in all the guesses, they got that first C correct. So that green square represents right letter, right place. In the first guess, they also had 2 letters that were the correct letters, but in the wrong places. It goes all the way down until finally 5 greens on the end, because that's when they got the word. So the question is, if the target was circa, what might this guess have been? Any ideas? We know it's C blank R blank blank. We also know that this letter is in circa, but not in that place. So actually it must be a C or an A. Any guesses for what that word might be? Carts. It could be carts. Does that work? That works. Right. So if that was carts, what might this guess have been? I'm not going to force you to keep thinking about it, but it's hard because you have to hold in your head, what did they do for that one? And if they did for that one, well, then what might that have meant about that one? Wouldn't it be great if there was an app that allowed you to guess other people's guesses and keep track of your guesses of their guesses? Something like this, maybe. So this is Wordlessly. This is somebody trying to guess what the guesses might have been. And this one, they got the first 3 letters correct, because you can tell because of the green bars underneath. So you get extra feedback underneath for whether your guesses of their guesses are correct. So yeah, that was my new game. And 2 months later, in April, I had built this game, which was fun. I'd invented a whole new game. I was really excited about it. I did a lot of work on this. So for instance, it has this whole capability for somebody who has played a game of Wordle. Even if they don't have an iPhone, they can visit a simple web page. They can enter their guesses so that somebody who has this app can then guess their guesses and get feedback as to whether they're guessing the guesses correctly. And I was feeling really good about this when I pressed the big submit button and I waited, and then I got the email. Was rejected again. This time they didn't say anything about copycat. So I've got over that hurdle. This is not Wordle. This is a new game that I have invented. It is brand new, not a copycat. But I didn't mention it before, but the 2 other rejections I had on the first time, I had them again. And those 2 rejections were, we can't find the in-app purchases and we can't find the end-user license agreement. And because they'd said that to the first submission, I had added detailed notes telling them exactly how to find the in-app purchases and the end-user license agreement. So, Claire, you pivoted. Yes. I did. I pivoted. Something else that's mentioned in the Lean Startup book. So it was a non-starter trying to recreate Wordle, so I invented something brand new. But it was still rejected. But this was clearly just communication. I just needed to be even clearer about how to find in-app purchases, end-user license agreement. I replied to the rejection with some more information. They replied back saying, your in-app purchases don't work. And we can't find your end-user license agreement. Okay, this happened 3 times. 3 times I told them very clearly how to find the end-user license agreement, and they said, we can't find the end-user license agreement. It was like they were saying I didn't have one, but I really did. I'd done a lot of work making an end-user license agreement. Sometimes my responses were really polite. I would say things like, it would be very helpful if you could explain what else I need to do. Sometimes my responses were more like, why does the link to the end-user license agreement in my app description not meet your requirements? And they would respond with, we can't find your end-user license agreement. And finally, they said, we are unable to locate a functional link to the end-user license agreement, specifically the US English locale is missing this link. And then I remembered that I'd put two locales. I'd done US English and UK English. Completely forgotten I'd done it. Turned out there was a hidden field in a form somewhere that I had to add the link to the end user license agreement in both locales, and I'd only done it in one of them. And it took them 5 rounds for them to tell me that. But never mind. This is nothing, by the way. We're not even halfway through yet. So here is a duck. Holly Cummins said yesterday that ducks are inherently funny, and it was all getting a bit depressing, so I thought I'd add some light relief. There you go. There's a duck. Okay. Hey, Claire. Yes, Alice? What about MMMSS? Many more, much smaller steps. Actually, Jess mentioned this in her talk yesterday. This is something that G. Paul Hill talks about. And the idea is that the smaller the steps, the lower the risk. And ideally, each step in your app development results in something being deployed. And when you're arguing about end-user license agreements with remote faceless entities, you are not deploying anything. And what's worse is, every submission that I made was so time-consuming, so difficult, and so soul-destroying that I was making myself feel better about the whole thing by doing really large quantities of development work in between each submission. So I was not doing many more, much smaller steps. Ideally, another aspect of MMMSS is continuous integration. You want to deploy each small change via an automated pipeline to prod. But even releasing to beta testers was a manual process in this. And I still haven't yet managed to set up genuine continuous integration. I did once get a consultation with an Apple expert who said, oh, yes, we can do that. Yes, here's a link to an article. And then after the phone had been put down, I went and followed the link, and it was a link to the manual process that I was already using. It was in the cloud, so therefore, apparently, it was what they call continuous integration. Really wasn't. And Randy Shoup said yesterday that his mobile team said to him, you're crazy, when he suggested to them that they might be able to move from monthly releases to weekly releases. So I don't think it's just me, because, I mean, ideally, I would be doing several releases a day. It's not easy in the Apple ecosystem to do continuous integration. And that doesn't help with MMMSS. Many more, much smaller steps. Okay, but anyway, I had worked out that I could fix the end user license agreement by adding it to the US English locale. And they'd also said something about the in-app purchases not working. I didn't know why. They didn't give me any information, but I did add some extra error handling so that hopefully they would be able to have some useful error messages that they could tell me about. So, you know, I think I've fixed the issues now. You can guess what's going to happen. I pressed the big submit button and they said, we cannot locate the in-app purchases within your app. But they said they weren't working. How did they know they weren't working if they couldn't find them? Also, several screens of your app were crowded. But I had definitely followed the guidelines. I tested it on every device. Also, which screens? Oh, no, we don't tell you that. No. And also, oh, no, wait a minute. So I did manage to fix that. I remember what I did. I replied to them, telling them where to find the in-app purchases. And then they came back saying, your in-app purchase products exhibited one or more bugs. But with no information. And then finally, at the end of the whole thing, to resolve this issue, it would be appropriate to revise the app. Like, really, really useful feedback. Thanks for that. Okay. So, Claire, tell me about testing. Yeah, I had a really robust test suite. You might have seen my other talk, which was actually about the other app where I didn't have a brilliant testing regime, but this one I did. I had been using test-driven development. I had a really robust suite of tests that tested all of the logic, but in-app purchases, no idea. Did not know how to test them. Everything I could find about in-app purchases online was hella confusing, and I didn't have any way of testing them. But 3 weeks later, I was getting somewhere. I did find a testable way of doing in-app purchases. It was manual testing, but at least it was testable. And also, I'd managed to get a response for them about what they meant about screens being crowded. They meant one screen, one button, one device. My aspect ratio code hadn't quite worked, and I just needed to make a really small tweak, and that was the crowded screens issue fixed. And also, I've got this testable way of doing in-app purchases, and I'd worked out how to tell them how to find it, which was yet another field hidden in a form at the back of Beyond. They wanted me to fill in a particular field telling them how to find in-app purchases. So I kept replying to them, telling them, but every time a new person came along, they also couldn't find them because I hadn't filled this particular field in. They never told me that. I worked it out by doing a lot of Googling. But anyway, I'd fixed that. And my application for a trademark had come through. So Wordlessly was now trademarked. The trademark belongs to me. So I pressed the big button again. Yay! And I got the response again. And they said, wait for this one, copycat. Content that resembles Wordle. I really thought that had been resolved. They hadn't mentioned copycat since the very first submission, since I implemented the brand new game that is not Wordle, but is reliant on the existence of Wordle. So, Claire, tell me about innovation. Oh, innovation. Yeah. The thing that's enabled by low friction. So when you implement a new way of doing in-app purchases, for instance, you deploy it quickly, you innovate, you get feedback, you find out if it works. Yeah, wouldn't that be lovely? Right, okay, so mid-August, 8 months after I started on this journey, somebody recommended that I request a call with Apple. So apparently if you talk to somebody face-to-face, you get better results. And I hadn't done that because I wasn't really sure if I could, and I didn't know if maybe there was a limit on how many of these calls I was allowed, but I thought it's time because I have no fucking idea what's going on here. So I had a phone call and it was really, really helpful. They were lovely. And they told me there's nothing wrong with the gameplay. It's not the actual game itself that we have a problem with. It's the look and feel. It looks too much like Wordle. But if you change the look and feel, everything will be fine. And that's what I'd done. So this is August now. I'd spent another 3 months working on an exciting, shiny, new look and feel. You've seen it already. This looks less like Wordle than it did originally. I've got this lovely pink thing here. I really like this pink thing. It's what I call my lozenge. And there's another blue one up at the top and all the buttons are round. And it's like, I really like the colours and it made me really happy looking at it. And I spent ages on it and I was really excited about it. So I submitted it. And guess what happened? Your app still leverages the popularity of Wordle. So it's not that it looks like it. It's not that it is it. It's that it leverages the popularity of Wordle. Yeah, of course yes, it does. You can't play this game unless people are playing Wordle. It's the end. I mean, and I was really, really, really depressed. I mean, seriously, this is when I cried repeatedly. I had worked so hard. I was so looking forward to people seeing my game, playing my game. I thought I'd prepared myself for the possibility of another failure, but I was kidding myself. No, this hit me really hard. It was incredibly depressing to keep getting rejected. The goalposts kept moving. It was really demotivating to be talking into a void with no proper communication. All the work and emotional investment on developing an app, never knowing whether it would ever have any users, subject to the whim of a faceless corporation with no published guidelines on how the hell you're supposed to do this thing. So, Claire, tell me about fart apps. Fart apps. Fart apps are a thing, I now know. I've been told about fart apps by somebody who does know a lot about iOS development. They are an official thing. Fart apps are literally apps that make farting noises. And apparently, all of the app stores are full of fart apps. There are loads of them. They're all really simple. They're easy to implement. I should have done fart app, but anyway. And they're everywhere. And Apple got fed up of fart apps. So they have an unofficial rule that if the App Store gets flooded with clones, they are fart apps and they don't get accepted. But they don't tell you that. Okay, anyway, amazingly, I didn't give up entirely. A couple of weeks later, I'd made a few tweaks to the wording. I'd heard that repeated submissions can get different results because it's not always the same people reviewing them. 7th submission, 13th rejection. Your app includes content that resembles Wordle. Claire? Yes? Is it time to talk about the sunk cost fallacy yet? Yeah, okay. So for those that don't know, the sunk cost fallacy is when people sink a lot of cost, which might be money or effort or whatever, because they feel like they have more to lose if they abandon all of that effort. And it's a fallacy because the opposite is true, because the more you keep going, the more you lose. Why on earth was I still going? 8 months. And I'd been warned at the start, right at the very start. People had said to me, but surely, isn't there going to be copyright issues if you're trying to make Wordle? And then it was bought by the New York Times, and we all know how litigious the Americans are. But I'd done all of that work. What a waste if I just abandoned it. But of course, the longer I continued, the more I lost when I finally did give up. That was the last submission. But is it the end of the story? I was really depressed, but then I came up with a new plan, and I do love a good plan. So my new plan was, first of all, start a thread on Twitter, tell everybody my terrible tale of woe, and persuade people to become beta testers. You get up to 100 beta testers, and it doesn't have to be on the App Store for beta testers to be able to access and use your app. So I thought, if I encourage people to become beta testers, at least I will have users, even if it's never actually going to be published. I also thought I could write about the whole experience or do a talk. I also thought that I could pull out all of the library code and all of the reusable code, put it in libraries, and then I could use it for other things. So, it wasn't a complete loss. Stuff like in-app purchases, for instance. I also thought maybe I could move it to Android, and I had always designed it with multi-platform in mind. So actually, it wouldn't be that difficult to port it to Android, but it also wouldn't be trivial. So this was my plan. I managed to get past the depression and start feeling optimistic again. So, Claire, tell me about user research. Oh yeah, user research. That's that thing where you get your product in front of users, find out what they think of it, so that you can find out whether you're meeting their needs and desires. Now, I was constantly deploying it to my phone several times a day. To beta testers, not so often, because that was a manual process that I hadn't managed to automate. Beta testers, Claire? Beta testers? Well, okay, I had one beta tester. I did invite more, but I didn't like nagging people. So I had one beta tester. Part of the new plan was to get more beta testers, which of course I should have done months earlier. But if you click that link or scan that QR code, you can become a beta tester. You will need an iPhone, but if you want to play the game, you can become a beta tester, and you'll find all the details on that link. You just have to fill in a simple form. I will need your email address, but that's all. Okay, so this is the end of the story, isn't it? Well, thing is, this is a message posted by me on a Slack group on the 6th of September. I had a new idea. And my new idea was a new game that was Wordle related. So it could use the existing code, but there was no need at all to mention or even link to Wordle. And guess what I told myself? It's really simple. It'll be really quick to implement. I had the idea on the 6th of September. I finished coding it on the 29th of October, nearly 2 months later. I haven't submitted it to the App Store yet because I still have to make a help page and a couple of other bits. But who knows? Here's the puzzle that I showed you at the start. Has anybody managed to work out what that phrase is? It is doable, but luckily I've been distracting you all with my wonderful talk, so you haven't had time to think about it. So here's the answer. And if you want to know more about this whole concept of emoji-coded phrases, you'll have to become a beta tester. You'll need an iPhone, or you could just come and find me because I have both apps on my phone and I play them all the time because I genuinely enjoy playing them. I have actually enjoyed making these apps for my own benefit. But again, if you want to become a beta tester, there's the QR code and the link. Oh, and in case you were wondering, this is the solution to the Wordlessly puzzle we had at the start. Those were the actual guesses from that game. I'm going to skip past it quickly, but you can see it again. If you come and find me, I can show you that again. So, Claire, tell us about collaboration. You know, that thing where you don't work alone. Oh, you're not supposed to see that yet. Right. So collaboration, this is that thing where you bounce ideas off people and then they help to save you from yourself, from your worst excesses. Because sometimes my obsessiveness can be a flaw rather than a strength. I really enjoy making stuff, but I can be impatient and impulsive, and it often feels easier to steam ahead on my own rather than do the coordination required to get other people involved in what I'm doing. But whenever I do work with others, I achieve even more, and I'm more likely to get stopped from disappearing down alleyways to nowhere. So, is this a sad ending to the story? This is my son, Oscar, being blocked. Or is it a happy ending? This is also my son, Oscar, not being blocked. Well, actually, it's a cliffhanger. So will the new version of the game get me into the App Store? I don't know. That is a surprise, still waiting for all of us to discover. Watch this space. But what have I learnt or been reminded of in the process of this whole journey? First thing is, walking skeletons are a really good idea. Get it deployed to prod before you add any functionality. Minimum viable products are also a really good idea. And to be fair, my very first version of Wordlessly was that, but it failed anyway. Pivoting is a really good idea. I'm on my second pivot now. This is my third game that I'm trying to deploy. Use many more much smaller steps to minimize risk. And also minimize risk so that you can use small steps and deploy to prod at every step. Continuous integration, trunk-based development, same principle. Minimize risk by working in small steps that you can deploy to prod at every step. Testing. Find ways of quickly testing all crucial functionality. Innovation. Facilitate innovation with a low-risk, low-friction development environment that allows you to deploy things quickly and easily. Fart apps are a type of app that flood app stores with clones. The sunk cost fallacy. Don't throw good money and effort after bad. User research, get your product in front of users as quickly as possible and find out whether you're meeting their needs and desires. And collaboration. We work better when we work together. So is this the end of the talk? Very nearly. So at the start, I hinted at some kind of inspirational message. I think I used words like joy and hope. If I didn't, I intended to. So how can I send you away on a high? This story doesn't have a happy ending, doesn't technically have any ending because we still really don't know how it's going to end. But I'm not holding my breath in terms of the App Store. I don't really think it's ever going to be there. But there is still room for optimism. So this app has been my refuge. I could always find motivation to work on it, apart from when I was in the absolute depths of depression, when I did pause. But then I jumped straight back in again. You saw that Slack message from the 6th of September. I don't recommend solo Apple app development. It's not a great development environment. But I would say that the pain intensified the joy. And failure is part of the creative process. This is just what I'm telling myself. But anyway, when I'm building apps, I do enjoy my job. So if you can find yourself something that you can build, maybe not even something digital, maybe you want to take up crochet, but creation is a powerful force. And it's really interesting that me and Holly and Jessica, and based on what I can see on the program, probably Daniel later on, have all been talking about joy. And I was happiest. So the final message is that I was happiest when my app was in the hands of users. So my one beta tester, Joe, he was really enthusiastic. He tested every iteration. He played the game a lot. My friend Kyle played it when I just put my phone in his hands and said, here, have a go at this. My dad, same thing. Even myself, I mean, I was a user. And whenever people were using it, and that totally includes when they couldn't work out how to use it, and they said, what's this button? What if I want to do this? When they found bugs, when they had criticisms, when they had suggestions for improvement, all of that was stimulating. It was exciting. It allowed me to move forwards and make the product better. And my lowest point was when I believed it was never going to get into the hands of users. So find users, get them involved as often as possible. Everything should be focused on getting your products into the hands of users quickly and frequently, then make the most of what they tell you about what you've done. So this is pretty much the end. This is Making Tech Better, which is the podcast that I hosted for season 1. There are 27 episodes. Every episode is me interviewing somebody really interesting about something really interesting. Of those 27 episodes, I think the 4 most relevant to this talk are my interview with John Skeet about coding for fun, my interview with Daniel Terhorst North, when is a test not a test, my interview with Lou Down about good services, and my interview with Carl Dickman about product management. If you want to get hold of me, I am still on Twitter because I'm too lazy to move. But you can also find me on LinkedIn. I am writing a piece for O'Reilly on chunk-based development, which will be published next year. I'm doing a coding retreat with Kevlin Henney at Software Cornwall in spring of 2023. That link will take you to all of my events. I'm available for public speaking, training. Emily Bates and I just ran a 3-day workshop on technical leadership techniques. I also run online training for O'Reilly around refactoring techniques, and I do technical coaching with teams to help them improve their software dev practices. And finally, very nearly finally, that is yet again the QR code and the link if you want to get all of the things that were shared during this talk. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody.